This podcast is part of the SJ Network. Go to s-j-network.com for more great podcasts and for contact information on publicist Steve Joyner.
You know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking this podcast needs an overhaul.
Do you have any ideas? I have one.
I'm already ahead of you. Just step aside and cover your ears.
Oh, I was going to suggest listening to today's interview with Tiago of Podcast Overhaul.
Well, that's a lot less messier. In the meantime, I guess I'll have to get used to an open-air studio.
It looks like you've got a new roommate. I guess mountain lions like open-air studios.
Attention, rebels of the Sherpalution. Today's podcast is being brought to you by Audible. You can get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/Sherpa. There are over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. And now Mr. Bruce will lead you into the Sherpa Chalet. As a reminder, please don't disturb the yak.
Welcome to Too Many Podcasts, the podcast about podcasts. Now, podcasting from the Sherpa Chalet on Mount Podcastia, here's your host, Jim, the podcast Sherpa.
Hello there, rebels. It's time for Too Many Podcasts, and it's me, Jim, the podcast Sherpa. I'm here on your favorite podcast app, and we're going to talk about favorite podcast apps in just a minute, because it's a theme week.
It's theme week. It's theme week. It's theme week.
And this week's theme is podcast apps and podcasts. And you know why? Because we've got a special guest today.
Who's our guest today, Sherpa?
His name is Tiago, and he hosts a podcast called Podcast Overhaul. It's a show geared towards people starting podcasts and little bite-sized pieces of information to help you get you on your way for sounding good and not sounding like a schlub. Do you know a schlub that has a podcast? No, you don't, right? No, of course not. And he also has a podcast app called the same thing, Podcast Overhaul, and I got to download it on my phone. Works really great, very easy to use. I always say that this podcast is available on your favorite podcast app, and guess what? You can find this podcast on the Podcast Overhaul app. How convenient. So it just happened to be a great coincidence that I got to talk to Tiago about both his podcast and his podcast app. And I think you'll find both very interesting. So let's have a listen to my chat with Tiago. Hello there, rebels. I am talking to you from the app room with Tiago of Podcast Overhaul. He hosts a podcast called Podcast Overhaul. He's got an app called Podcast Overhaul. He's even promoting a candy bar called Podcast Overhaul.
Yes, it's in the works. It's in the
that's
works.
right. It's creamy and it's got lots of nougat.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Welcome to the show, Tiago. How you doing?
Doing well, Jim. I appreciate you having me on, and it's good to speak with you. Let's have some fun, talk some podcast stuff. It's what we're all about, and hey, let's get to it.
Sure. So let's hear a little bit about you. Get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I myself am a podcaster, just like many of you, either listening to the show or creating your own shows and things of that nature. A buddy of mine actually got me into podcasting on the sports side and aspect of it. So we've big sports fan, big Miami Heat fan, obviously from Florida, from Tampa, and this area. So I kind of grew into that and started listening to Dan Le Batard and Colin Cowherd and all the great sports guys. I'm like, man, this is really fun. So a buddy of mine approached me and said, hey, he's just leaving college out in Boston. He's like, hey man, I'd love to do a sports podcast too. Do you want to do it with me? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I have like a TV production background and things like that, just kind of from a hobby perspective. And so, he brought me on a podcast. I'm like, hey, this is a really cool hobby. It seems like something really neat to do. And so that's what we started doing. We started, just creating this podcast and, talking sports takes, basically doing what we would do in like your parents' living room. We just turn on a mic and get it done, so that was really my introduction to podcasting. And then that led me to listen to all these other shows and just really expand. And I'm like, wow, this is really a great medium and a great platform. And from that just kind of took off.
So how did you go from sports into podcasting basics?
So that's really it. So I felt like it kind of occurred almost accidentally. So, because we're doing the podcast and then I'm like, all right, well, how do I upload this? Okay, so this is how I upload it. And then the very first podcast sounded terrible, Jim. It sounded so bad, and I'm like, I can't listen to this. I don't want to listen to it. Like I can't, it sounded so terrible. And I was like, I don't know, maybe we could do something to fix it. So I'm like, all right, well, maybe I can, fix the podcast audio maybe. So then I started working on that. As I started to continue to do research, and as I continued to do research just into podcasting as a whole in general, I'm looking at some of the major guys like Anchor and all them, and I'm looking at all these podcasters, and I'm like, man, like why is this so much more difficult than it needs to be? I'm like, because it really shouldn't be. I feel like everyone should be able to do this and have a platform and do it in a way where it's enjoyable. Because there are some really small podcasters and whatnot who have some really awesome, fantastic stories, but either no one gets to hear them because of lack of exposure, or they literally cannot hear them because the mic quality is bad, or they're not able to, or something of that nature. So I'm sitting there looking, and as I keep, somebody say, hey, listen to this podcast, listen to my podcast. And I keep listening, and I'm like, well, why? This could be better. You just got to tweak. This could be this. And then as I continue to look for resources, I just couldn't find any that I felt appealed to the small podcaster. Everything to me seemed generic, commercialized, and I didn't like that. And so that's what kind of led me, to kind of move into this platform. I was like, you know what? Like, why not? Why not have my own platform? Why not create the platform for the podcaster?
Yeah. And what I like about your show, it's easy to understand. It's in bite-sized pieces. So it's not like you're overloading anybody with information or anything. It's like, okay, we're going to talk about this today. And here's the difference between this and this. And you want to stay away from this, and maybe you want to lean towards this. And there you go. It's, I think anybody just starting out, this is it is definitely the type of guidance that somebody wants, because people say, oh, it's a podcast and it's overwhelming and I'm doing too much at once.
Right.
And, they could listen to it in the course of a day.
Oh yeah, the whole thing
themselves,
right? Or you can come back, or you can, and that's really what it's about, because there are no rules to this, Jim, right? It's like podcasting is the new blogging. There are no rules to a blog post. There weren't rules until it became commercialized, right? And then you see, well, this is how you have a really great blog post, or this is how you do, and then it's like, well, that's still not the case. Like, if you start a blog, you can blog about whatever you want, right? So it's just like podcasting. There are no rules to this. But for the podcaster who's thinking, man, I kind of wish my voice sounded like this, or man, I kind of wish that this was a little bit better. Well, why not provide that insight? Why not, give that advice, and if you want to take it, you could take it. If not, don't take it, right? Because that's what podcasting is about. It's whatever you want it to be about, but hopefully the Podcast Overhaul podcast and the app can at least facilitate and help. Yeah, it's there if you need it.
I was listening to your episode about social media.
Yes.
That's a big struggle with people who kind of got their foot in the door. It's how do I make it bigger? Because that's really where everything starts to grow. If you do like a small show and you've got a handful of listeners who really enjoy your show, that's great. But
right.
In everybody's mind, I think they want to say, well, as long as I'm doing this, let's have as many listeners as we can.
Right. And that ideally is the goal for everyone, right? To just have everyone in the whole world listen to their podcast. But the thing is that that's not, it's not reality, first and foremost. And it just isn't. It just isn't, unfortunately. But secondly, you'd much rather have 100 dedicated listeners as opposed to having these masses of thousands. And and I get it. It's like, well, maybe I won't get sponsorships, or but there are other if you're looking for monetization, there are other ways to do that. But if you're looking to just get your message out there and get your show out there and enjoy it, social media can help. And again, I want to make that clear. Social media can help. However, especially with the forms of social media that are available to many of us and to podcasters, it's important to understand that if you are a small podcaster and you don't have, you're not bringing in anyone from the outside, or you don't already have some form of audience or fan base or some form of networking, and you're just starting from scratch, social media will be next to impossible to grow on. And that's the one thing I haven't seen these gurus or experts basically say. They always come in and say, hey, you can do this. All you got to do is post a bunch of content. All you got to do is this. But that's not necessarily true. Hey, start an Instagram. News alert. Instagram is dead. Instagram will not show all your content. Instagram shows about your content to maybe 10% of your followers. So let's say I'm starting out and I have 100 followers. Only 10 followers of my 100 are going to see my content. How am I supposed to grow if that's what's happening, right? The game is rigged to begin with, man. How am I supposed to do this, right? So my recommendation is, yes, if you want to use Instagram and other, you can. Social media does help. TikTok is a big thing right now, and if there's anyone trying to grow, I would recommend using TikTok as a format of doing that, or Twitter. Twitter is really, really great as well. It's bite-sized, it's quick. Even though it's so huge, it still almost feels kind of cozy. It feels like you can kind of have a conversation with anyone from across the world. And it does feel like people are actually either viewing your tweets or seeing them, or scrolling through the timeline. They get that bite size and they look at it. So my recommendation to a small podcaster with no base, no anything, my recommendation would be to start with Twitter or start with TikTok if that works for your brand and for your podcast. And then if, start from there and then grow the Instagram, right? And then move forward. And then I think you can bring the people from Twitter, from TikTok to your Instagram. And it's worked for a lot of successful podcasters too. There's a podcast called the Jumpers Jump podcast, I think. That's essentially what they've done. I mean, their TikTok is, they have, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of followers on TikTok, right? Yet their Instagram, they probably got like 8,000 or 9,000. It's designed that way. If it works for your brand, use TikTok, use Twitter. It's going to be the most expansive method, in my opinion, of growing. To me, Facebook, Instagram, it's dead. Unless you have the money to pay for it. I'll throw that in there. Unless you could throw in for ads, do it. But if not, I would definitely go Twitter or TikTok for sure.
So with the show being called Podcast Overhaul, when you listen to podcasts, or maybe if people get in touch with you, what's the one thing that makes you just want to cringe and say, okay, this is what you need to fix? Do you have like a number one pet peeve?
Audio. That is my biggest pet peeve in the world, and I get it. Some people will say, well, look, as long as my content, what I'm talking about is great, then people are going to listen, right? And to some extent, that is true. If you have the most incredible story that I have never heard in my entire life, that I'm like, hey, everyone needs to hear this, sure, then maybe. But if your story is no better than the next guy in talking about the same TV show or talking about the same interests, why would I want to listen to someone who sounds like this, and the audio is all crackly and bar, and no one wants to listen to that, right? I mean, podcasting is an audible medium. Your voice, what's going into those headphones, that's so important. And that's probably my biggest pet peeve for sure.
Lots of times when I go looking for people to interview on their shows, and I will sample their podcasts, and sometimes it's like, no, what do you...
Nails on the chalkboard, it's tough. It's tough. Like, it's there though. Like, hey, the content's there. You just gotta you just give a good megaphone. Just give us something to just give us a platform here. Something. Give us a chance to listen to it, and that's all I ask. Even like YouTube videos, right? I'm a big like YouTube guy. I love watching YouTube videos. I listen to some podcasts on YouTube, which is funny because I'm like, hey, use this podcast platform. Here I am listening on YouTube. But but no, I just, you get to a certain YouTube video or a podcast on YouTube and then like 2 seconds in and you can't hear anything. And I'm like, I'm done. I click right out. I cannot do it. If I can't hear you, I can't put myself through it.
I just had a guy on recently, a while back, and his name was John, and he hosts a show called From Podcast to Vodcast. And he has a little bit of a video background, just like not professionally, but playing around, and he got really comfortable with, I guess, almost in the same way as you did with podcasts.
Cool.
But you learn by experience, and he works with a lot of people, and he said that's what happens a lot of times. You want to make it interesting because if people want to be visual about it, you need something that's going to hold their interest.
Absolutely. And videos, I mean, video is a great, in terms of advertising or in terms of getting people's attention, like video over audio, that's just the way it is. And there's no competition. Mm-hmm. TV killed radio. There's nothing we can do about that. It sucks. There's nothing we can do about that. But that's what makes podcasting so cool because it's the stories and it's the people that you're gonna interact with and meet that you're not gonna get on YouTube necessarily. That you're not gonna get on other platforms. Like podcasting, you get to hear things and interact in a way that no other platform is doing right now. And I think that's really incredible.
How do you like to be interactive with your listeners? You have a special trick or just any tried and true methods?
Especially with COVID and whatnot, it's been kind of difficult to kind of launch anything face to face for, obvious reasons. There were a couple of things when we were planning on launching everything, there were a couple of things in the works in terms of maybe like local events here since we're based out of Florida. But then that all kind of died. So yeah, I think kind of going back to social media, it's been kind of the best way to do it. Twitter is really a big thing in terms of reaching out. So we like reaching out to podcasters through Twitter, kind of giving them an opportunity to talk about their show. We try to find their show, make sure it's on our app and on our platform. If it's not, we try to find a way to put it on our app and on our platform. We want to give everyone an opportunity to do that. And then in terms of our featured shows, we try to, and I say try to, because there are a couple of shows where they're just so good, you have to feature them, even though they're commercialized or sponsored. But most of the shows that we try to feature like really cool indie shows or shows that maybe some people haven't heard of. Shows that, you're not going to really see featured on Apple Podcasts or shows that you're not going to see featured on Google Podcasts or anything like that. There are shows that you're going to see that you're like, oh, this is a really good show. How come I've never heard of this? Well, this is the opportunity for you to hear about that show. This is the opportunity. So actually on our website, podcastoverhaul.com, there's an area where small independent podcasters can apply to be featured for a feature on our application. So what we'll do is we'll feature your podcast for a week, free of charge. We want to give that opportunity.
Yeah, and that's what happens. I think with some of the bigger platforms like iHeart and Apple, money talks. Oh
yeah, absolutely.
The celebrities will probably get that notification just right off the bat because
that's it. That's absolutely it. They can come in and be like, "Hey, I have this podcast," and and the audio sounds terrible. But if you're like the biggest celebrity on earth, it doesn't matter. You're right. I mean, you can come in and say whatever you want. You could say it you can record it on a toaster. It doesn't matter. People are going to listen to it, right? Like that's what they're going to do. Same thing. I'm guilty as charged. For example, I watch a lot of Undisputed on FS1. Great show. Shannon Sharp and Skip Bayless. Those guys make me laugh, right? Shannon Sharp finally has a podcast, and just kind of like technically speaking, it's not a great podcast, technically speaking. Like the audio sounds terrible. Like sometimes you miss stuff. Sometimes it's not that great, but he is such a polarizing figure. Like it's like you have to listen to it, and the guests that he has, it's so like you have to listen to it, but that's him. Like 9 out of 10 guys, 9 out of 10 podcasters are not going to be this guy, right? And are not going to bring in this audience and this base from, whether it be the NFL or his TV show or what have you. So I think kind of leading into that, I think that is the mistake that maybe some podcasters think. They think like, hey, like my content's really good. And maybe it is, but maybe it isn't. Or maybe it isn't as good as you thought it was. But it's good enough for 100 listeners. Maybe it's not good enough for 1,000 listeners. But that's okay. Because that's not the reason a podcast. The reason a podcast is to reach those 100 and to have those interactions. And to me, that's what it's all about.
And it's funny that you bring that up because I think probably one of my biggest gripes about podcasts, and you could tell that some of these people are trying to be somebody that they're not.
Right.
How many have you probably heard where, they think that they're Gary Vee, they think that they're Joe Rogan.
Right, exactly.
Stop it. Just be yourself. People
Exactly.
like you. My shtick is I have a lot of bad jokes. And I know that they're bad jokes. So,
but it works.
Along with the listener, really.
But it works. It works. And I like your because you come in and your personality really comes right through. I was listening to a couple episodes before we started, and it really comes right through. The zing and the zang, and like those little tidbits. That's what makes your podcast unique and how you're able to interact with your listener in that regard. And I think that that's important, and it's right. Don't pretend to be anyone that you're not, and that's what I hope to do with Podcast Overhaul. I don't ever want to come across as this like, hey, like this is podcasting. This is how you should do it. Absolutely not. There are no rules to this. I am not an expert. I'm a podcaster just like your podcaster. So if you got some kind of cool tip where it's like, hey, Podcast Overhaul would be better if you did this. Cool. That's awesome. I'll do it. Like, hey, the Podcast Overhaul app would be better if you do this. Awesome. In fact, someone on Twitter tweeted back the other day and said, hey, I really like your app. Awesome. I was like, great. They're like, hey, I would just tweak this and add this. If you tweak this and add this, it would be awesome. I would use it every day. And I'm like, that's great. I'm like, I welcome the feedback. Absolutely. I'll do anything to help that be better. And I think that that's important, and good for Gary Vee, good for those guys, good for those experts.
Right.
But I will never claim to be one. I think it's important, we're all in this together and we can all learn something new every day.
And it's also important to consider that they've been doing it a long time. So they've had time to polish their act.
I mean, clearly something's working, right? I mean, right? I mean, it's working for them. I don't want to say it's not, but yeah, they've done something different, and I think it's important.
Could you tell me a little bit about the Podcast Overhaul app? I actually have it on my phone. I wanted to check it out. And
yeah.
There's a specific podcast that we may have heard of featuring a certain podcast. But we won't mention names.
It is possible. It is possible. We may see in the foreseeable future. But yeah, no, for sure. We wanted to keep the interface simple, and we wanted to keep it clean. And I think that was kind of one of the biggest things when I was designing the interface, because like a lot of, especially on Android, like sometimes that'll be like the one knock for Android apps, or like they're very functional. Like no one will ever accuse Android apps of not being functional. Like they're very functional. But the reason why Apple, I feel, always kind of has this edge is because like the UI always looks like so good. The interface looks so clean, and people are like, yeah, like, oh, like I have a buddy who's always like, which is funny because it's available on Android, and I do have a Pixel, but my primary phone that I use is an Apple phone. It is an iPhone. And he's always he's like, hey man, well, when are you gonna transfer over? And I'm like, I'm gonna get there. And he's like, well, why do you keep using Apple? And I'm like, honestly, it just looks so clean. It's like the clean simplicity of it. And I'm like, in Android, I love it. It's so functional. But sometimes a lot of the apps, like, they look so clustered, and then you got the ads in there and all that stuff. And so part of Podcast Overhaul, I wanted to focus on the design. I wanted to make it a clean, simple interface, homepage. You get your feature podcast at the top. You have your search bar. You got the top shows in that region. And then each page and tab and interface is simple. You want to add a podcast, subscribe to the podcast, add it to your library. You want to share your podcast, hit the share button, put it out on Twitter, copy the link, whatever you need to do, right? So I wanted it, and the player as well, simple. So we just wanted a simple interface for people to enjoy, listening to their podcast, And then obviously the community page to head over to our website and they can access, the blogs and the tips and other stuff that we have on there.
Your app, I think, is the first one that I've ever seen that not only is it geared toward the podcast listener, but towards the actual podcaster, and
That's
that they
it.
can make it, accessible.
That's it. That's what we want, and it's got to be for the small podcaster. Podcasting has become so popular and so commercialized in such a short period of time. If you got to look at the statistics of it, because podcasting's been around since, and again, don't quote me on this, but I think around like 2005, at least that's kind of when I heard about it a little bit. And then, it has all these episodes. It didn't really boom till 2018, right? 2018, a third of all podcast episodes ever, a third of them came into formation in 2018. That's insane. That's an insane. So it's what happened? Well, the money got involved and they got commercialized. So I hope that Podcast Overhaul is an opportunity for the independent podcaster, for the smaller podcaster. And that's how we want the platform to be.
I like that. It is a very easy app to use. I know some people can get overwhelmed, but I downloaded it and poof, I was like, okay, here we go.
Simple. That's what it's all about. No, it doesn't need all the bells and whistles. The only bell and whistle I'll say is the podcast randomizer feature. So we did want to throw that in there because we thought that would be cool. So if you tap the Podcast Overhaul logo, it randomizes a podcast for you, which I thought that would be cool. Because sometimes I don't know what to listen to, well, maybe I'll just hit something and I'll listen to something I've never heard before. We thought that'd be cool.
It's really discovering without the science. Is just a kind of randomness to it. And there it is on your phone. Don't check it.
Random.
Like it?
Throw the dice.
Great.
That's it. That's exactly it. Absolutely.
And you said you're working on a second season of the podcast.
Yes. We're working on a second season of Podcast Overhaul. So we're looking to have a couple of hints and tips. This season might be a little bit more focused on kind of what we touched on at the beginning with social media. Not to hate on social media or any of those tech giants, because honestly, I it sounds like I'm a social media hater. I really enjoy social media a lot. I think it's great.
It's got
able to interact.
place.
But yes, absolutely. And in terms of growth, I just think that there are different methods and different things that you could do, in my opinion, that could work. I know that there are others who have different opinions and stuff that's worked for them. I think that that's really cool too. So I'm definitely open to that. So, if anyone has anything for me, send me an email or hit up our website. We're happy to listen and put in any suggestions. But we'll throw in what we can there. A few microphone recommendations as well will be in season 2. We kind of talked more generally about microphones and the technical aspect of it. This time I wanted to make some recommendations and just personal stuff that I feel, are really great microphones or are really good for, the podcaster in the apartment or the podcaster with this budget, podcaster with, I think that would be maybe something that people would enjoy. And then hopefully getting a couple of guests and a couple of people with podcasting experience, not expertise, but experience that could lend some tips and hints that maybe we can all benefit from.
Since we are talking about podcasts, what are some of the podcasts that you like to listen to?
There are a couple of ones that I've been listening to lately. I'm actually, it's terrible. It's one of my favorite shows. I'm actually rewatching it right now with my wife, but Scrubs is such an awesome show. So Fake Doctors, Real Friends with Zach Braff and Donald Faison is one that I've been listening to for a while. Really good show. I really enjoy that. Scam Goddess is another that I've been listening to as well. Been really enjoying that lately as well. It's kind of, there's some interesting little stories and tidbits. And then in terms of another podcast that I was just listening to, well, Jamel Hill. I listen to Jamel Hill a lot. She's one of my favorite journalists and whatnot. So her podcast is really great. I've been listening to that. In terms of some smaller podcasts or podcasts maybe you haven't listened to, the Jumpers Jump podcast, I've been listening to that as well. Really nice guys, really enjoy what they're doing. There is another smaller podcast that I've actually had my wife kind of listen to, which is really interesting. Which again, it's not a podcast that I would generally listen to, but she really had some insights and perspectives that I truly enjoyed. It was nice listening to her perspective and listening to something that I myself as a African American male, I would never have this perspective. But it's called Swipe Fat, and she's on Instagram too. Really interesting. Really enjoyed that. And those are just a couple off the top of my head. I have to check my library to see what else I'm listening to, but that's what I've listened to recently. So, but hey, if you got any recommendations, I'll take them.
If you go on my website and you check some of my episode pages, if ever there's an interview with a podcaster, there's always at least 5 or 6 recommendations on there for
I love it.
Whatever floats your boat.
I love it. I will definitely check that out. Definitely check that out. Absolutely.
In addition to people downloading your app, Podcast Overhaul, we have this section called Shameless Self-Promotion.
Shameless self-promotion. Shameless self-promotion.
And this is where you get to let everybody know where they can get in touch with you.
Well, allow me to do this shamelessly. No,
The only way to do it.
Absolutely. Well, look, if you want to get in touch with me, Podcast Overhaul, check out our Twitter. We love Twitter. We are active on Twitter. We respond to Twitter. Questions, suggestions, mentions. Hey guys, is my podcast on your app? Hey, we'll find it and we'll tweet out a link. And we're here to communicate and reach out with you guys. So definitely hit us up on Twitter. Apply for the podcast feature. Head to our website. If you even just have questions, concerns, inquiries, head over to podcastoverhaul.com. Hit the contact us portion of it. Reach out to us. Talk to us. We are open, and that's what we want to make clear. We're open for suggestions, questions. Just want to say hi. Come say hi. So podcastoverhaul.com. If you have a Twitter, at Podcast Overhaul, Instagram as well, at Podcast Overhaul. So check us out.
There you have it. There is Tiago. He's the man. He is the creator of Podcast Overhaul and also the host of the podcast and the creator of the eventual candy bar.
That's it. In the works.
In the works.
That's it. In the works. Oh, no, I forgot to mention we are working on an iOS version as well. So hopefully the Podcast Overhaul app will be available on iOS soon to come. I don't want to put an exact date on it, but I'll check with some of our team there on that. But hopefully that should be coming soon.
And I say this all the time on my show, or even my tweets to check out my show on podcast apps. This is a very easy app for you to use and very easy to find any show, whether it's mine or Tiago's. And we hope that you check it out. Tiago, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Tim, thank you for having me. You are a wonderful, wonderful host. It's been lovely being a guest. We really appreciate it. We had a great time. So it was a wonderful time talking to the Sherpa, Jim, the podcast Sherpa. Pleasure to meet you. Thanks for having me on, brother.
Be a rebel. Follow the show at Sherpalution on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
And now it's time for Sherpa suggestions.
So since Tiago likes to work with unknown podcasts, I found an article on a site called Thrillist.com about 7 underrated podcasts you should be listening to. So we have You're Wrong About, which is 2 former journalists, Sarah Marshall and Michael Hobbs' show. They shine a light on subjects you think you know all the details about, but they prove you wrong. And next we have Harlem Queen, which is an audio drama, which is the story of Stephanie St. Clair, the numbers queen of the Harlem Renaissance. Ooh. FOH with Kelly Sullivan and Lillian Devane, which is a podcast about all things restaurants. Where Should We Begin, which is hosted by Belgian psychotherapist Esther Perel, the host of Mating in Captivity, and she talks to couples in her podcast. She's like Dr. Ruth. And we have Puddles with Andrew Collin, who is a comedian, and he interviews other comedians. Oh, Andrew is also known as Puddle Boy, I might add. Okay. We mentioned this one before. You Must Remember This, which is a podcast about old Hollywood. And finally, we have the podcast This Is Actually Happening, which is a podcast which explores the human experience through thematic first-person storytelling. I guess it asks questions like, what if you're a podcast Sherpa and nobody thinks you're funny? What would you do? What would you do? A very special thanks to Tiago of Podcast Overhaul for coming on down to the show. Thank you so much, my friend. It was a great chat with you. I really appreciate it. And, if you are a person who listens to this show and says, well, this idiot is doing a podcast, why can't I do one? Well, you can. And I would suggest if you're going to do one, listen to Tiago's podcast first. Breaks it down for you nice and easy. Makes everything simple. Trust me, I really enjoyed listening to his podcast as well. And while you're at it, if you're in the Google Play Store and you have a phone or a tablet, why not download his app, Podcast Overhaul? It's really easy to use, and you can, of course, hear this show on it, and you can hear the show on many other podcast apps and podcast platforms, and on my website, Sherpalution.com. And segueing into my website, Sherpalution.com, a while back I was talking about the website, and one thing I neglected to talk about was that on the website, Sherpalution.com, if you look at the top, you will see a link to my merchandise store, and it's called the Sherpa Shop, TEE-Sherpa Shop. And if you click on it, it will take you to the tpublic.com site, and it's tpublic.com/the-T-Sherpa-shop. That's how you remember it. But if you want to just make it easy, go to my website, click on the link, and you'll see all the stuff that they sell there and we've got 9 different designs for you to choose from. We've got t-shirts, tank tops, hoodies, crew neck sweatshirts, long sleeve t-shirts, baseball t-shirts in adult and child sizes, and in lots of different colors as well. We even have onesies. Yes, you can have Sherpa logos on your baby. I'm sure that's what you're living for, right? Of course. And we have masks, not, of course, the surgically approved mask, but a kind of mask that you can wear for fun. And, I've got one that is a personal favorite, and it says, blessed with a face for podcasting. And what other things that you have? Stuff there around your house. You have wall art. We have notebooks and coffee mugs, of course, and pillows, totes, pins, and even tapestries. All with show logos and little clever things that I've thought up in my twisted little mind. We also have phone cases, laptop cases, stickers, and magnets. Did I say magnets? Yeah, I even got Viva La Sherpalution kitchen magnet, believe it or not. They're really nice. And they work, yes. So if you want to fill your house and your life with podcast swag, the Sherpa Shop is where you want to go and check it out. So I guess that's going to do it for me this week, and we will see you next time with another wonderful show with another wonderful guest that I know that I like, because if I don't like them, I don't put the shows on. See, now you know, little secret. Oh. So it's me, Jim the Podcast Sherpa, on behalf of me and everybody here in Sherpalution Studios. Thank you so much for joining us this week, and we will see you next time. Mr. Bruce, let's head on out of here. I'll grab one door, you can grab the other door, and everyone can just run out screaming. Okay, bye, folks. Viva La Sherpalution.
Thanks for listening to Too Many Podcasts. Please disperse. You can go home now. I said you can go home now. Viva la Sherpalution. Viva la Sherpalution. Oh. Yeah, I'll come back now, you hear?